said off camera, nobody cares how I'm doing. So why do you even ask? What do you even ask?
It's routine. I feel like I got to do it.
You know, it is hilarious.
You know what? Never mind. Don't say it. Nobody cares. I'm kidding. Go ahead. Continue.
It is hilarious. So our guest here, Tim, introduce yourself.
Oh, wait, hold on. My bad. I'm so unprofessional. Go ahead.
My name's Timothy Troy. I'm a filmmaker based out of Chicago.
Right on, right on.
So we were watching some of your films, and they seem to be mostly horror shorts.
Yeah.
Would you say?
Yeah.
And I said, I didn't see a picture of you. Obviously, I don't know who you are. I said, this guy's going to be the calmest, most mellow guy that I've met in a while. Because that's the type that's into that stuff. Like heavy metal dudes, they're so quiet and calm off. Like
you're a heavy metal dude?
Iron Maiden, Metallica.
There you go. There you go.
My favorite band.
Wow. I don't know any of that. I don't know any of heavy metal and none of that stuff. I never really got into it. Nope. You were the I didn't even like, I mean, I was into like, I guess alternative, if that's a different type of soft rock. I don't know.
I mean, there's crossover there. Like a Jane's Addiction or Soundgarden or something.
More of
he doesn't even know.
More of like, I guess, would you say Linkin Park would be alternative? Would
Linkin Park's got some metal to it.
Nickelback, that kind of shit. Like I used to listen to those people.
Nobody likes Nickelback.
I know. I do. Anyways.
So you're the guy.
So since you introduced yourself already, where'd you learn? Did you just pick it up and go with it, or was it something you went to school? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I went to Columbia College.
A little closer to the mic for me.
Sorry. Yeah, I went to Columbia College for filmmaking, but I was into it before that. You know, I bought a camera when I was, I don't know, 6th grade or 8th grade, something like that, so I could practice just making movies with action figures in the backyard and that kind of stupid stuff, just experimenting. But
see, I wish I would have started like that. That sounds so freaking cool.
They call it the stop
motion.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, the first thing I did was like a stop motion Godzilla movie where he, get all the army men out and got Godzilla and the Hot Wheels, and he just stomps through the, stomps through the place.
Fucking cool, man. Like, see, I wish I had a cool story like that to tell. Like, I don't mind stories fucking boring as fuck. I did a commercial and then I started acting, but that's freaking cool. Like, so you have like who's the creator for Family Guy?
Seth MacFarlane.
Yeah, so he has like ever since he was like a kid, he was like making like these Star Trek things or whatever on his own or whatever until now he's fucking famous as fuck. Like, that's awesome stories, man, like that.
And it's just what I've loved even as a kid. Like, I was always writing stories and making stories up when I was a kid, and then movies just were kind of a natural progression of that. There was a point which I'm not sure if it was Star Wars or Jurassic Park that I saw first, like making of videos on them, probably about the same time. And when I saw those, a light went on over my head. I was like, God, people can get paid to do this? Like, I saw the pickup truck going by the Death Star where they were blowing stuff up, right? Everybody's seen that shot. So you saw the making, the behind the scenes stuff. And then it was like, oh, I can do that as a career? Like, this is what I want to do.
This is I had a conversation with a friend of mine who has a daughter who was getting into basketball, right? And then she's like, no, I don't want my kid to play basketball. And I'm like, what? Why? She's like, oh, I don't know. I want her to do something else. I'm like, wait a minute. So you're telling me that it's a bad idea for your daughter to play a sport and get paid for it? I don't see the reasoning here. I mean, she's playing a sport. Good enough. First of all, it's something that's fun, right? They play sports for fun. We work, right, John? We work because we have to work. It's not fucking fun. I wish I would get paid to fucking play basketball or films or whatever. Like, I mean, obviously you can get paid for doing that.
I mean, they say you don't work a day in your life if you
have fun.
Yeah, well,
I think you said that wrong, but okay. We'll
I mean, you know what I mean.
If you love what you do, you won't work a day in your life.
There it goes. So what was your first project and what age are we talking about?
Well, like I said, the first thing I think I ever did was that little Godzilla thing. The first movie I properly made was in high school. As a senior, I took a U of C class, University of Chicago, where we made videos or films actually on 16mm film, silent, black and white kind of stuff. It was very primitive, but you got a sense of how to put a movie together.
Yeah.
How to edit things, how shots get created, and I loved it. I also met my first girlfriend there, so it was like
a win-win.
Yeah, it was a win-win.
Win-win. Yeah.
Me being the shy, ridiculous guy that I was, I didn't actually ask her out for another year and a half, but we can talk about that later.
Taking it slow.
Yeah. And then from that, you know, I took video production when I was in high school. And by that time I was like, okay, I'm going to film school, and made films all through film school. One of which was like a Batman fan film, which I really got a kick out of doing. That was the first thing I ever did where we had sync sound, and was working with dialogue too. It was neat doing that because it allowed me to just focus on making the movie, because the story's basically already there. I was just kind of ripping off of one of the comic books.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to write it. You know, I just was able to focus on how I want to tell the story. So it was neat. Kept going through film school, and then started making my own films outside of that a few years later, took a break, and then I've really been going hard since about 2017. And since then I've made almost a dozen.
Wow. That's impressive. Production wise, like, what do you have your own like production people that you work with, or?
I've got a group together that we kind of all, I've got a group together that we work with fairly frequently. It's kind of the same core group, same DP all the time, same writer and editor, a couple of the same producers, people I trust, people that I know can make the movies really good. I found a sound guy that I really like working with. Actors I'll go back to if they're right for the roles. I like bringing actors back on other stuff because it's nice to have that relationship and that shorthand.
Fair enough, yeah.
Yeah.
So, as a director, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you interact with your cast? I mean, I've always been curious because I'm kind of dabbling into the whole directing thing a little bit. I'm more of an actor than anything else, but it's always fun to dabble in other things.
To tell people what to do?
No, that's not the case.
Yeah,
that's not the case.
Well, there's always some of that, right? Because I mean, I've got a friend that runs a film festival, and he says it's all about ego when you get down to it, and there shouldn't be shame in saying that, right? Because that's why you're doing it. It's to help make you feel better about yourself. It's to get your name out there in the world. It's to present something to the world. Like, art is all about ego when it comes down to it.
Oh, for sure. I see.
So,
that.
I mean,
how do you approach an actor that's like, let's say, struggling in a scene?
I guess it all depends on what the scene is. I think that largely it comes down to casting, right? Like, you have to cast right in the first place in order to make sure that the actors aren't having a hard time on set.
We need to cast right going forward, right?
Yeah.
We know.
What does that mean?
Nothing. We'll talk about that on a different episode. Continue.
I've always thought, if you get the right cast, 90% of your work as a director is done. Like, you don't have to get up a mountain if they're already most of the way there.
Okay.
And sometimes the nice thing about casting is sometimes they'll show you something you didn't see before. Like the movie I did most recently, I had an actor in mind when I wrote it, and I had a sense of how this movie was going to go in mind. And then the actor that I wanted wasn't available. She couldn't come back out from LA. It just got too difficult to do. So I had to cast it instead. And the actor that I ended up casting actually played it completely differently. And it made the film way better than what I had originally thought. It made it creepier. It put more nuance on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
you never really know. I mean, everybody brings a different twist or a different, turn to everything.
That's what makes film so fun.
Plus, right? Sometimes it could be a plus instead of a minus.
Yeah. The thing that makes film fun is having all of those collaborative voices come in. And, the good thing about being a director is that you can pick and choose and be like, okay, that's a great idea. That's a good idea, but I like this one better. And
do you find it hard telling people no?
Yes.
I do too.
I always have.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, this guy wanted DiCaprio for his short, but he declined.
Well,
so I mean,
I tried.
If you would have got him,
did you reach out to him?
I tried. It
would have done a little bit better, I think.
I got hit with a big negative real quick.
Well,
real quick.
You tried.
Horror seems to be your cup of tea, right?
It's what I go for, yeah. Horror and sci-fi are kind of the genres that I love working in. I've also randomly made a science fiction romance is one of them, and then I've also made a Civil War comedy.
Yeah,
so
wow,
like a sci-fi rom-com,
a romantic drama. It's sort of like it's definitely not funny per se. It's more like tragedy. It's about the end of a marriage, but it's got a lot of sci-fi trappings around it. It's set in a sci-fi world and follows kind of how technology affects the relationship of these two people and how it splits them apart. It's a film called Empty. It's up on my channel.
Right. So how involved are you in the whole process? Like, you don't write?
I write some of them. I've written a few of the shorts, maybe about a third to half of them that are up on the channel, but I prefer working with writers because I like having somebody else that is in charge of the story. Like, you know, somebody whose only function is to be looking right at that story and making sure that it works from all the angles. And then you also have somebody to bounce it back with, you know, like you have two sets of eyes on it. When you're writing and directing, you can get so close to it that you don't want to change anything. You can't see what needs to change. You need some distance from it. And having a writer and a director, I think, gives you that.
Yeah, I tend to feel that a lot of times taking on too much is also a problem. Like if you take on writing, directing, acting in it, blah, 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 all this stuff, like you ever deal with, well, obviously you say you delegate more now, which is something I feel like I need to do on myself, but I don't know. It's kind of hard to let go. I don't know if you find that. Like it's hard, like you have this idea in your brain, you know, and trying to get it there. I mean, yeah, you got to work as a team, but like it's kind of difficult sometimes.
Sometimes I find that harder sometimes at my normal job. I'm a union dolly grip as my day job.
Or Chicago PD.
Yeah. And I find that harder to let go of, you know, ideas there sometimes than it is on set as a director. Maybe that's because
what does that entail?
Dolly grip.
Yeah.
So
Not
you know,
in the acting biz, so
cameras on film sets they're big and heavy and take a lot of manpower to get them going and working. It's like a 4-person team just to make a camera run most of the time.
Yeah. So
to move them around a set and keep it solid, you have to put them on a dolly.
Okay.
So a dolly's a machine that's probably about that big. It's got a hydraulic arm on it. It can go sideways to do a move where you're moving sideways, tracking with an actor.
Yeah.
You might have seen background behind the scenes movies where they have it up on a track. And yeah. So that's my job. I lay the track. I put the camera on the dolly and move the dolly around as I need to. If the camera's on a crane, I'm usually the one swinging the crane. If the camera's handheld, then I'm the guy, you know, grabbing onto the camera operator's back and leading him through set, making sure he doesn't bump into people or trip over stuff. Same thing if he's on a Steadicam. So, and now we started doing things on remote control cameras that you carry by hand. So that's me and another guy like running through set, you know, following actors around.
Next question: are you guys hiring?
If you're union, you would have to be in the union to be on the sets. But it's a fun job.
It sucks.
See, because he has the muscle for it. He'd be able to hold.
I don't know about all that.
You find it interesting, John? Honestly, would you want to get involved?
I do actually. It's better than what I'm doing now. That's for sure.
But I feel like you got to have a thing for that type of stuff. I mean, yeah, it's gonna pay the bills. Don't get me wrong, but like I feel like if you have a legitimate interest in it, it's more satisfying than it just being a job.
It is.
Yeah,
I mean, if it's just a job,
yeah.
You can't do union film work if it's just a job for you. I suppose you can, but the hours are too punishing. The days are too long. The life is too weird. Like I'm on this TV show that goes 22 episodes and is 10 months a year, but that is a very rare bird in our industry nowadays. You know, most of the time it's 10 episodes, 8 episodes here or there. Or it's a movie where it's like 2 months and then you got to find the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. Like the fact that I've been on the same show for 10 months a year for almost 10 years now.
Wow.
Is a very, very rare thing.
I mean, we were probably on set at the same time.
Probably, yeah.
Because I was on PD last season. Was it last season? Could have been last season, whatever. Unless
I took the day off for some reason, which I take a day off here or there. But
you're union, you're allowed
technically, but that's not my cup of tea.
That's the best part of being in a union.
That's not my cup of tea. Like I admire people that do that. Like I think it's fucking wicked, right? Like moving cameras around, the way everything works, like the people outside that are dealing with audio and running this and running that, all of that stuff fascinates me. Like I wish one thing about being an actor, I wish access to that was a little bit easier. Like to being able to watch it and whatever. Even when when I was cast, obviously it's a little more, you get a little more freedom. You can go where the fuck you want. But even then you're like, here's your part. Okay, go back to your trailer, come back, blah, blah, blah. Like I would love to spend a day or two just behind a camera of a movie and just watch people do what they do. Why are you looking at me like that?
Because they don't allow random people to peruse through the set.
I get that. But even when you're a cast member, unless I'm assuming you're a big timer and you're 90% of the show, you can go wherever the hell you want. But even like me, when I was on PD, like, yeah, I can walk around the set that I was there when I was there. But I can't be like, well, can I come tomorrow and just watch?
No, but the day you're there, you could probably say, hey, do you mind if I come in at call or whatever and just
I don't even think I had the nerve to do that yet.
That's true. Like you need to have a certain amount of comfort doing that and a certain amount of, willingness to be forward about saying what you want. And that's all relationship based. And it's all
like, I'm pretty sure Leroy Hawkins can just show up whenever he wants or Leroy Jesse or whoever, or Marina, they can just show up whenever they want. John's like, who are these people that we're talking about? We know who we're talking about.
Well, now you got somebody on the inside who will let you walk around.
Do you talk to them pretty often?
I mean, I see them on set all the time. Yeah, we're on first name basis because there's plenty of times that I'm like literally right next to them doing something. If the camera's over somebody's shoulder, I'm right there next to the camera.
So how was your how did you take the Jesse kind of leaving Chicago PD?
It's sad. It is. We've all been on that show for so long together. Everybody's
You've been there how many years?
I've been there since season 2. Like I started day playing season 1, but I was full-time season 2 all the way to now.
Wow.
So, and then Jesse and I were on a show called The Mob Doctor before that. So I knew him from before I was on PDs as well.
Wow. That's crazy.
I mean, it's not like, I'm not saying like we hang out on the weekends or anything, but
what was the feeling? What was the feeling on set? Were you there on his last takes?
No, I wasn't there for his last scenes. But
I'm assuming that probably would have been a pretty.
He came by to say goodbye to everybody. We did the day we did that last scene. Actually, the crew was split up. So
I ran into him when I was on PD. He's well, obviously I don't know him. I just talked to him for a few minutes or whatever. Whenever we were behind the camera or whatever, they all seem pretty cool. I don't think I've ever had an issue or like a personal thing with like, oh, this person seems like this or whatever. Some of the fans that I know that have gone around have said certain things about certain characters or whatever, blah, blah, blah. I don't think they understand sometimes, like the fans. They don't understand how stressful acting can be or the day can be or whatever. But nonetheless, any bad stories you got on set? Anything bad that you saw happen?
I mean, I don't really have...
Or directing? Any problems?
I've been very blessed that everything I do directing-wise has been really smooth for the most part. I think that may come from being on Chicago PD or, being in the industry in general. It's like you see how things run and you see what you need to make them run well. And it's kind of easier to implement that ahead of time because you know what pieces you need in place to make your day simple. So I'm happy to say I don't think I've ever gone over 12 hours on a day. Other than I had one day where I think we went 5 minutes over. And most of my days are under 10 hours because I just don't want to abuse the crew. I'd rather do 2 days.
Doesn't want to abuse the crew. You hear that?
Oh, shut up. That's not true. You're full of crap.
You have a long day?
Why are you making me look so bad right now? That's not true at all.
Do you have a long day on your short?
We've had days where I think well, mind you, we're super green to begin with, right? So we're super amateur. I think it's the kind of that growing pain of learning how to put things together. Cause like in the beginning, you have an idea how things kind of go together, and then you start to realize, okay, we could have done this better, could have planned this movement better or storyboarded this a little bit better or whatever. I think that's kind of where most, beginning indie filmers kind of start off with that kind of mistake of like, we take on too much at once. Like the first day we went to go shoot, now mind you, I have a little more experience than the other people I work with because I've seen a little bit because I act. We overshot what we thought we were going to finish and there was no way in hell. But like, you learn as you go.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm assuming as you know yourself, I mean, everything's kind of a learning process. Sometimes you got to jump and see what happens. You fall on your face, you get up and just try it again. I don't know why John's just talking shit over there, but whatever. What do you do to help? What do you do to help?
I hold stuff.
You hold the boom mic
and things.
You aim a microphone at people?
Yeah.
You did pretty well. I'm gonna lie to you.
I appreciate it. The audio from the last
take was really, really well done.
I was just standing there, but all right. I'll take it.
You are a vital cog
The way you say that so sarcastically. All right.
So what are you working on right now? Anything besides PD, obviously?
Yeah, I've always got something going. We just, like I said, we shot one in, what was it? It was May. We shot our last short, and we're going through post on that right now. I have another one premiering at the end of the month, which will be probably the last in the series we're calling Creepy Cuts. Yeah. They're all micro shorts. I think the longest one's 2.5 minutes, something like that.
That was the car one, right?
Yeah.
The guy gets eaten by the car.
Yeah. Yeah. Which we shot, that one, it's called Venus. We shot that right before the pandemic, like literally a week before the pandemic.
Everything closed down.
Yeah. And then everything shut down. And we're like, oh, well, what are we going to do now? So we did editing on that and got...
Do you do your own editing or?
No, I have a friend. My name. I have a friend whose name is Dan McGuire, and he has edited everything on that channel. He's edited everything on that channel. I think he's edited just about everything I've ever done, frankly, other than a couple of things in school.
I will give you a lot of credit. What you have up there looks hella smooth.
Thank you.
Like really hella smooth.
Very crisp.
Yeah, like I think that's the first thing when we were watching it. Well, I watched it when you sent it to me, but then I came here one day and we were watching some of them. The first thing I think we noticed was just like it's super clean. Like obviously I didn't know you had worked for like Chicago PD and all that type of stuff to that extent. So obviously now you can tell, right? There's a lot more experience in those shots than the average indie filmmaker. The same festival runner that I was mentioning before gave me a really good compliment on the first movie I submitted to his festival, the one called Ding Dong, which is another cool.
up on the channel. There's a moment in there where the camera slides across the living room, where she comes down the stairs and she goes to the front door, and the camera just slides across. And he called it out because he's like, this is something that I don't see filmmakers do very often, and it's just moving the camera, not like for really, for stylistic sake or really emotional sake. That was solely just so that you could see her, right? But it also at the same time, it gives you a sense of scope of the room, and it's got value too. I know
exactly which moment you're talking about.
But he said he doesn't see that a lot in indie films. And I was able to do it because I went and I bought myself a doorway dolly, right? And so it just came up from the basement. We shot that in my house. So basically we just set the shot up with all the gear that was already in the house.
Okay.
But it's a nice thing to be able to think about that kind of thing and know why you're doing it and doing it intentionally. I was really proud of Ding Dong after we made it, because I sat back when Dan had put the final finishing touches on the very last cut we did of it. He asked me what I thought of it, and I said, you know what, it feels confident. And I think that was the happiest I could be with it right there, because if it felt confident and it felt complete, I didn't feel like I was missing anything from it. I didn't know how people were going to take it. I thought when that thing went out to festivals, I was either going to get people laughing at it because it was ridiculous, or people would be legitimately scared of it. And luckily,
there was no in between.
I didn't think so, right?
Yeah.
Because it's kind of if you guys go watch it, you'll see why, because it's kind of a silly concept. But I think the way that we managed to nail the tone and the sound design helps a lot, I think, because we had a company in town called Noise Floyd do the sound for us, and they really knocked that out of the park.
You tried to get Hans Zimmer to do a score, but he also declined.
Yeah, he never answers my phone calls, bastard. The first time we screened it, it was a drug that I don't think I'll ever be able to stop chasing, right? Because we screened it at a charity event, believe it or not, for a friend of mine's charity called Patrick Lives On. It's to stop gun violence. But the first time she did this thing, it was just collect a bunch of her friends that made movies and put them up on a big screen somewhere. So the audience was not a horror crowd, not even in the slightest, right? Okay. They had no idea what was coming. So as this movie progresses, there's one moment that's kind of a jump scare, and then there's one moment that's a really good scare at the end. The first little jump scare, there was this Twitter that went through the audience. It's like, ooh. And it was 300 or 400 people in there. So it's a decent sized crowd. You could feel that energy. Okay. And the movie's only 4 minutes long. So when I saw that little Twitter, I knew I had him, because about 45 seconds or a minute later, the last scare of the movie comes up, and when that shows up on screen, there was a jump in the crowd, like a whole yell, just kind of waved all the way from the front of the theater to the back. And I'm sitting in the back because that's always where I sit when I watch my own stuff. And it was just so much fun to experience that. And like I said, I think I'll be chasing that for the rest of my life.
That's kind of what you do those movies for, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
you took them for a ride, basically.
Yeah.
Well, you have a nice house.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then who came up with the actual concept of how that thing was going to look?
So
I would say it's like a mole type.
You're talking about the monster.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's a mask. It's from a company called Immortal Masks out of California. They do really high-end movie and Halloween masks, but they're all pre-made. And when you buy one, they paint them for you. The custom paint job is included in the price. So they're a little pricey, but it was worth it. And then I had a effects artist named Rebecca Lito come, and she modified it so that it was more in line with what I was thinking. If you see the movie, you kind of understand why I wanted the thing to be blind, right? So it didn't have any eyes. Yeah. Which is another thing that I've seen audiences like react to. There was a moment at a different screening where I literally heard somebody yell out, "Where are its eyes?" Oh. And this is great. This is what you try and do as an artist. You try and get these reactions out of people. Well, I came up with the design for it, but it was like picking it from various stuff. Like I think I pulled the crawlers from The Descent were one of the references I pulled, and then worms, like blind cave worm kind of stuff as what I wanted it to look like. And then I found this mask and I was like, well, can we modify it to make it look more like that? And she was like, yeah, we can do that. And then the hard part she had to do was take that mask, which has a bib, so you can hide it under a shirt or something, but she had to take it and blend it into somebody's actual body. Yeah. So she made more silicone, attached it to the bib, and then had to taper that all the way down until it could blend. So it was a pretty big job. And then she had to paint the guy to match the mask.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. That was legit. It was worth it though. There's
a time lapse up of her doing it. It's cool to watch.
A little more complicated than our peasant ass film that we got going on over here.
It was more complicated than I think I expected it to be when I first conceived the whole thing.
I feel so intimidated right now. It's almost like I always like whoever comes here, like sometimes I'll show like what I'm working on or whatever. Mm-hmm. I feel like I don't want to show shit. But that's pretty cool. I mean, we watched a lot of a few of your shorts, and we saw Ding Dong as well. Mm-hmm. Very well done.
Thank you.
Super well done. So what else are you into besides filming? It's got to be something else, right?
I mean, you work 60 hours a week. That's kind of most of your life. But I read a lot of books. I watch TV shows. I've got 2 kids at home.
You still enjoy TV and movies and stuff like that?
I can't turn it off.
Really?
I can't turn it off.
I feel like you're the only person that has ever really come with me with that answer who's involved in
He is. Yeah. I've been keeping track.
I do it all day long, and I come home and I watch a TV show. I try and watch a movie sometimes when I get home, but unless I get home really early, I just don't have the energy for it. Like if I make it through an hour-long show when I get home, that's about the most I can get. But do you still
enjoy in the sense of like you still get lost in it? Or
if it's good.
Or do you look at the technical parts of it like I do? I have a hard time.
If it's good, I can still get lost in it. Sometimes I can turn it on and off as I'm watching. There's some movies that I've seen before that a movie I've seen 1,000 times. Like if I go watch Jaws or something, right? Which is one of my favorite movies. I can get lost in the story. We just went and saw it on the big screen a couple months ago when they re-released it, which I suggest anybody who has seen this movie, if you haven't seen it on a big screen, go do it, because you can know this movie by heart, and then you will still be surprised at how strong an experience it is in a movie theater. It's just entirely different than watching it on your TV at home. But the point being, I can get lost in the movie sometimes. Like when Quint starts doing his Indianapolis speech, I'm not paying attention to the filmmaking at all. I'm just watching Quint. Like I'm barely even noticing that it's Robert Shaw.
I find it, I have had such a hard time kind of, watching stuff nowadays because of the fact that I kind of know what happens behind the scenes and all that type of stuff. It's kind of like a little bit like I started looking at technical things. Like even like I was watching the Dahmer thing was like the last thing I watched. Even while I'm watching that, like, you know, I'm there with my friend and we're watching it and she's like, I was going to tell her something. And she's like, that better not be a freaking thing about cameras or whatever. And I'm like, guess I'll stay quiet then or whatever. Like I have a hard time letting that go. Cause and it's not that I don't think it's a negative because I notice things that look really well. Yeah. Like I'm like, oh, that's a great shot. Like I like the way they made this camera movement or whatever, or the actor did this and that was really good or whatever, blah, blah, blah. It just sucks because like I go home and then I'm like, I'm trying to process the movie in my head and I don't even remember really what happened in the film because I'm so focused on performances or technical stuff or whatever. So it's hard to turn that off for me.
I think some of that may be the learning process. Like you said, you know, you're still gathering your knowledge about the subject. And I think it's sort of an up and down. Could
it be the curiosity? Because I'm still
some of it, right?
Trying to learn it. That might be it.
I think so. And I think as you get deeper into it and you get more comfortable with everything, you start to be like, all right, you can notice that stuff in the background. And if something really cool pops up, it comes forward. But at the same time, maybe because you're so into it right now, you're focusing on it more than you would be otherwise.
That's a good point. That's a really good point.
What series, like, I'm assuming you're a fan of the genre.
Like horror genre?
Yeah.
Horror and sci-fi.
What got you into it? Like what series?
Probably Jaws. I think if I had to put a button on it, the first horror movie I really can remember seeing would probably be Jaws. I saw that young.
Yeah.
You know, I was probably 6 or 7 at the oldest, maybe even a little younger the first time I saw it. I remember going to the video store as a kid. For those of you who remember video stores.
Right, yeah, we do.
Hollywood Video.
Yeah. I went to the video store and I would just get the stack of all 4 Jaws movies. And that would be what I would do that weekend. I'd be like, Jaws, Jaws 2, Jaws 3, Jaws 4. That would just be, you know.
So are those are your favorite movies right there?
Favorite movies, probably Star Wars.
Any of them? Because I mean, some of them are pretty.
The first one.
Why do people argue with me? And I have my boss, and he might watch this, but my boss, we got into this argument over which of the Star Wars is the best one. I say the first one, and he's like arguing with I don't remember if it was the second one or the third one. I don't know which one he argues over, but I'm like, dude, the first one is such a unique concept. Everything about it was, I think, which one's the one where they they have a bunch of they have a really long battle with the little furry
Ewoks.
The Ewoks, the teddy bears.
What movie is that in?
That's Return of the Jedi.
That's the third one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think he was talking about that one. I'm like, dude, that whole sequence took forever for me. Like it was super slow or whatever. It dragged. Like the first one didn't drag as much. It was more exciting. It was brand new. It was fresh. Whatever. We never saw it. I think sequels are usually the hardest things to do.
So, just talking about the original movies, because we could do this whole podcast if you wanted to and turn it into Star Wars discussion, and I don't think we want to do that. But if you want to ask me what my favorite of them is, it's probably Jedi. If you want to ask me which one I think is the best, it's probably Empire. But if, you know, the most important is, like you say, it's Star Wars. It's the first one from '77. That was like lightning from a clear sky on how important it was to filmmaking. Like that changed between Jaws invented the blockbuster. And then Star Wars perfected it, right? Star Wars is this movie that creates genre pictures as something people will go to in droves and that everybody wants to see. And after that, you can like plot it to see exactly how many movies are just trying to copy Star Wars and trying to rebottle that lightning.
I think there's always movies that are like they transcend time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, no matter what time you see them, what year you see them, you watch them 20 years from now, and they're still impressive. Mm-hmm. Like to me, Star Wars, obviously Star Wars a little bit before my time. To me, the big ones that stand out for me are like Jurassic Park stands out for me. Terminator 2 stands out for me. Those movies stand out because just Jurassic Park in itself is a marvel for me. Because how does a movie that came out in '93, right? If I'm not mistaken, '93
still looks so good.
Still looks better than most. The effects in Jurassic Park look better than the effects in any of the Jurassic World movies.
That's my argument. Like I thought technology was supposed to improve, but how does a dinosaur from '94 look more realistic than a dinosaur from 2022?
I can tell you, it's, in my opinion, it's the person making the movie, right? I think Spielberg knew the limitations that he was going to have of the CG. He knew the limitations he was going to have of the animatronics, which is another thing. Like they had a 25-foot long Tyrannosaurus Rex puppet that they were using to make Jurassic Park. So that
would shake when it would get wet.
I love that story so much. I love that story so much. Yeah.
Love it.
But he knew what he was doing with it, and he knew what he could get away with and what he couldn't. And now I think you have, with CG, there's nothing you can't get away with, quote unquote, right? Like you can have the actors, you can have the dinosaurs, you can have whatever, do anything. The camera can go anywhere around them because it's all going to be invented. And the only limit is your imagination. I don't think that's necessarily a great thing. I think having limits kind of forces more creativity.
Yeah.
If that makes sense,
I think
right?
it grounds you.
Yes.
And I think being above, when you're flying so high up in the sky, it kind of loses.
Tell the Fast and the Furious franchise.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Why are they going in space?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great example. Like Fast and the Furious started with freaking import cars stealing car parts. So now they're flying freaking little sports cars into outer space. Doesn't it make any fucking sense? Like they've gone so far and so far. Like my biggest gripe is not even the CG or none of that. Just the fact that if something important is happening in the United States or in the world, right? The world is at stake. And there are no FBI agents. There are no CIA. There's no government organization that could help. The only people you can call is Toretto and his group of car drivers. They're the ones that you need to call.
James Bond. Don't worry about him. Yeah. You got to call the car thief.
Go get Liam Neeson. No, we're good. We're going to go get Dominic Toretto.
That's what happens in movies. Armageddon, same thing.
Oh
they didn't have scientists go up there.
Armageddon at least makes sense.
Yeah, because they needed them to drill.
Yeah.
I guess they were expert diggers.
Drillers,
yeah, I
guess. That made sense.
Yeah. Armageddon is two different movies completely. Like the first half of it might be the best thing Michael Bay's ever done, right? And I'm not a big Michael Bay fan,
So
but he's
splitting the movie in half is what you're saying?
Yeah. I'm not a big Michael Bay fan, but he's got some stuff that's good. Like I like The Rock. I like Bad Boys Are good. The first half of Armageddon, before they actually get to space, the movie is almost flawless.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah.
Like the whole training stimulation,
The training
how they
stuff,
follow everybody, how they had to go get them when they escape, when they were out for the night or whatever.
The humor of it, the part where they're like, listing all the stuff they want. Oh, and none of our guys ever want to be Texas again. Ever.
Harry chasing the boyfriend with a shotgun, the whole 9 yards. That was cool. Yeah.
That's all really like fun cinematic stuff. And then they get to space and it gets so ridiculous.
I'm gonna 100% agree with you because every scene like Billy Bob Thornton's in, like he nails that look for that film. Like he's perfect in that role. Like I know he can be like funny and like he's so good like in these like semi-serious roles. Like, he should do them more. I mean, he's older now, but I mean, he's a lot older now, but still, like, I don't know. I thought it was one of his coolest roles. And the fact that he wasn't in a wheelchair, but he had a walking problem or something, right? In that film, didn't he have like something on his legs?
Maybe.
Or was I crazy? Am I making this up?
You're making it up.
I don't remember
something on his feet or something. Okay, whatever.
Could be.
I might be crazy.
I don't remember. It's been a while since I've seen Armageddon.
But I agree. I think that movie, the first half is a lot better than the second half.
Yeah, I watched the first half of it, and then there's the second half where they're like in dune buggies jumping around the asteroid, bouncing. I'm like,
there's no gravity on that thing.
No.
We're gonna jump a Grand Canyon.
This is ridiculous.
That makes sense. You're just not,
I can't do this anymore.
Oh, that movie's so old. You know what's funny? I didn't know that movie was that old. The other day, not too long ago, we were talking about it, and I swear to you, I thought it came out like in the 2000s. And
when I found it, 98.
It's like really old. I'm like, holy crap! Like, that's a really old flick.
Jurassic Park's my touchdown for that. Because Jurassic Park is 93. It's going to be 30 years old next year, and I'm like, this is not correct. There's no way that's accurate.
It still looks good.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about it at work, and I'm like, man, like obviously the guys that I talk to are a lot younger than me. They're in their early 20s. I burped. I'm sorry.
Yeah. What was that all about?
They're in their early 20s or whatever, so they don't really remember Jurassic Park. And they're like, "What's Jurassic Park? You mean Jurassic World?" I'm like, no, definitely not Jurassic World.
No.
Park. Like, go watch that one. That one's really good. Like everything about it was like almost like perfectly played.
Yeah. And the funny thing about Jurassic Park is that it's got some of the biggest continuity errors you will ever see in your life.
Yeah.
Like they explain, people have figured out ways to explain away, but no, they're
like
just
the moat thing.
the moat.
That one killed me. You know what we're talking about?
No.
So when the Tyrannosaurus comes out, right? When he steps out, the Tyrannosaurus steps out, and it looks like he's on ground level.
Mm-hmm.
But then when he flips the car into the paddock, it falls down by like
30, 40 feet. Yeah.
Like, where did that come from?
There's like legit the tops of trees like underneath the top of this this wall. Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
I didn't even notice.
There's times where you can see like wires pulling the electric wires out of the frame or whatever, stuff like that. It's a bunch of
Nobody
stuff.
Cares.
Dude, it was done so well. Like I mean, I don't know. That movie was probably one of the first ones I really remember watching as a kid. Like besides Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
Ninja Turtles was big for me.
Would it be realistic if that kid actually survived how many volts?
Oh, 10,000.
10,000 volts.
Tim.
Yeah.
Is that what he's trying to give him CPR?
Yeah, he's like, no, Tim.
Oh my God, that movie was so good.
Love it. Love it. I can
so
watch
you said
that movie
Star Wars
times.
was one of your favorites, or that's
Star Wars is.
If you had to pick,
if I had to pick one, it would probably end up being Star Wars. Cause just for sheer number of times I watched it.
I feel like John's gonna ask you, are you sure it's not an Arnold Schwarzenegger film? I just feel that coming because we always talk about Arnold Schwarzenegger.
You know, when I was younger, Arnold Schwarzenegger was like my favorite actor.
I'm telling you, that guy was the man. Early 90s,
oh God, yeah.
late 80s.
I mean,
come on.
if you are of a certain age, right? He is not. He has a very limited. He's a limited range.
Limited range, yes.
But he's good in the actors. He's the roles that he chooses. He's pretty good in them.
He's good for what he does.
Yeah.
Sure.
this is the argument for what he does.
The argument we have with The Rock. Like, I don't think The Rock is great. And I'm a Rock fan because I was a fan of his when he was a wrestler or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think he's a great actor per se. He has very limited range, I would say. But he's
always playing a version of The Rock. Yeah.
Yeah. Arnold falls into that category. I don't think Arnold ever really played a character. The only character he played was like the Terminator.
They hire him for that character.
Yeah.
For him.
I mean, you can say the same thing about Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise, for the most part, is always playing some version of Tom Cruise. You know, he's a little.
I would say he's got a little more. He's got a little more. He got more chops than Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah,
of course. Yes. But I get what you're saying. It's kind of the same guy.
Yeah, you cast some actors are cast for their personality, and that personality can do a lot of stuff, and people want to watch them because that personality has so much charisma. And some actors can just turn into something completely else. You know, Gary Oldman can do 1,000 different things.
He doesn't like Gary Oldman.
Gary Oldman?
Did he tell you to bring that up?
No.
Yeah. Gary Oldman's my favorite actor. He's awesome.
Why not?
He's an amazing actor. He blows my mind. Like, I think in but he's like what I would consider a character actor. So like, he changes in every film.
Yes.
I don't think I've ever seen a film where he plays, oh, that kind of sounded like the guy from Air Force One. I've never seen that. Every character he's ever played is always like dramatically different. Even in that, what's that TV show, that Netflix thing that came out not so long ago? It's like a black and white thing about MGM. Oh, what the hell was it called? Whatever. It's like a Netflix special. It's about the history of that studio or whatever. And Gary Oldman plays the lead. Even in that, like, it was just, whatever. It's just him kind of just talking. But even then, it's like, it's a character. It's different than what he's done in every other film that he's done.
Yeah, I think that's what I think every actor wants to do, right? I think that's their goal.
Wish. That'd be great. That'd be awesome. But he's a fucking beast. Are you a Marvel fan by chance? That's
yes.
Not your cup of tea.
I mean, I've watched most of them. The Phase 4 stuff I've kind of drifted away from a little bit. Like I went and saw Doctor Strange because I liked the first one and I love Sam Raimi. But once the Avengers were done, I was kind of like, I think that might be my jump off point for really being diehard with it. I saw everything else.
Do you think they've peaked?
I would remain open to whether or not they still have anywhere to go, but I think it's going to be hard to top what they did. Building 10 years worth of movies and coming out on top like that with Avengers Endgame and what was the other one? Endgame and
Infinity War.
Yeah, Infinity War and Endgame. That's a hell of a feat.
I would have been okay if they would have. I know it was never going to happen, but if they would have said we're done, I would have said that is one hell of a successful
Yeah.
collection of films.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they have any bad. Well, if you had to pick what was the worst one or the least enjoyable, what would you say?
Probably the second Thor movie, which is not a highly original
Sure.
statement,
Yeah,
but
I mean,
you
I'm
know,
pretty sure most people would agree.
I wasn't a big fan of Ant-Man either. Like,
Yeah, me neither.
I think Ant-Man works better as kind of a
sub character.
sub-character to pepper in rather than be his own thing. But maybe give him a TV show or something.
Jonathan, what would you say?
Huh? I don't.
You that lost.
See, I don't get vested in those types of movies. I enjoyed the last one.
That's the thing, right?
What was the last one?
I don't know
What was the last one you saw?
when they beat the guy up with the ring.
Oh,
Thanos?
Yeah, that guy.
that guy.
He's talking about Endgame, right? Yeah.
Sure.
I think Marvel, they're not really movies, right? It's a TV show. I think Marvel comes off as because there's a sameness to them, even though they're different. You know, Winter Soldier's kind of a spy movie, and Guardians of the Galaxy is kind of a space opera thing. Like, they're still kind of all in the same house style. Like, kind of how all Netflix shows kind of look the same.
Sure.
The Marvel movies all kind of have that same deal too. Since they're all linked, it makes it feel like it's just episodes of a TV show. I think it's, you know, the most successful television show you're ever going to see, and it's a amazing business strategy they put together. But they do all feel a little disposable, right? Like, I walk out of a Marvel movie and I'm like, okay, that was fun, but it's not something that's going to stay with me. And I've never had a real strong desire to rewatch any of them. Like, here's the key. I'm a huge physical media guy. I want to buy Blu-rays. I want to buy DVDs of anything that I ever think I'm ever going to watch again. The only one I've bought is Iron Man. And after that, I was like, I've
Sure.
You know.
See, I feel like Endgame, I think Endgame and Infinity War, those served a hell of a purpose. I think those were the ones I can be like, okay, I remember those because they were so massive. But let's think about what they were, right? They were, it was an exclamation point, period, to how many films, you know, so it was huge. It was huge. I remember like talking about that, like getting tickets like damn near months before the movie ever came out or whatever. I feel like they've peaked in the sense of, you go through all of this, like, how do you surpass that? Like, how do you surpass Endgame? How do you get that? And there's I don't want to say there's no way, because I think they might have one or two aces up their sleeves. Like they still have the X-Men.
But how do you surpass that whole storyline?
I just feel like they're not doing that now. Like, I mean, I haven't invested that much time into the new stuff. I saw Doctor Strange. That was cool. I really wanted to see Patrick Stewart play Professor Xavier again. That's kind of my thing. I saw some episodes of the TV shows, but the TV shows kind of lose me really quickly because I'm like, I'm not invested in these characters I know nothing about, or I don't want to know anything about them. Yeah. You know, like,
it's also such a big time commitment.
Yeah. I mean,
you know, it's 10 hours or.
When you know certain characters, they're easier to follow, right? So like Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, those original group, they're easy to follow because we know who they were. Right. But now they have characters like, was it Werewolf by Night?
That's the new one, yeah.
New one, or Moon Knight, whatever. She-Hulk, all these characters, and I think now in She-Hulk, the finale was that the Hulk has a son, or they're bringing his son into the picture. I know he exists in the comic books, but this is where me and my boss get into these arguments over, no, it's dead, no, it's not dead. There's so much you can do. Yeah, there's so much you can do to a particular crowd right now. So like, if I'm Marvel, you almost got to think, what's the average consumer going to watch right now? Mm-hmm. They're not going to watch Werewolf by Night because they don't really know who it is, unless it's someone who's willing to invest the time. Yeah. But if they don't know who they are, like, kind of off the bat, they're not going to really do it. Like, my sister's not going to watch that. She's the average consumer. You know, the average consumer will watch Deadpool because we've seen Deadpool in the past. You know what I'm saying? No, if you bring in Hugh Jackman again, which they are, which is a pretty cool thing, that might be cool.
That was a great little reveal too. I love that.
He's walking, eating the apple.
You want to beat again? Yeah, sure. What the hell?
Why would they? I know the whole concept is to deny it until you have to, but like, dude, everybody wanted it. Like, I think no one would have cared if they would have announced it a long time ago that, oh, Hugh Jackman's going to play it one more time or whatever. Do you think it's going to be a repeat thing, or one off? I mean,
with Deadpool, it doesn't even matter because he'll just be like, yeah, we're doing the same thing again. Do you care? And you'll be like, no, because it's fun. Deadpool has no rules and
I think the funniest thing Deadpool did in the movie, I don't remember which movie it was when he killed himself. Like, but the version from the Logan movie, well, the old Wolverine movies, you know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah,
That was like the funniest thing. And I'm like, or when he has Hugh Jackman's face, the piece of paper when he knocks on the door because he still looks like shit or whatever. That was pretty funny. That movie was awesome. I just hope they don't water him down too much because I think that's what Marvel might end up having to do.
I don't know. They'll probably release it under Fox, or they might drop it right on Hulu or something. I mean, if Disney's still making Predator and Hellraiser movies.
Oh, that's true. I really would.
Predator.
I really don't. I really don't want to see Deadpool change because he was awesome.
I don't.
In the first one. In the first one, the second one, I'm kind of like.
I can't imagine
whatever.
Ryan Reynolds would go back for it if they had to water it down.
That's true. That is true. But
let me ask you this: Were you ever a comic book fan?
Yeah, but comic books were not really my thing at my age.
But so you were around. Like, were you reading them as a kid?
I mean, I had a few as a kid, but then again,
you dabbled.
Yeah, I dabbled. Sure.
So, but you were around then for.
Now. I did a lot more research now as an adult than I did.
But you were around for like the late 90s, early 2000s. When,
absolutely.
Yeah, when the comic market kind of imploded on itself, right? You kind of remember that?
Yeah.
I think that's what I worry about with Marvel is I think they might be getting to a point where everything is just so massive that it can't support its own weight.
Okay.
Because I think,
makes sense.
The time commitments that you're asking people to put in now, like you said, like when you got to Avengers, okay, you had to have seen everything. Like, even if you were like going to go do those ridiculous marathons, right? Sure. It would have been like a 24-hour marathon or something. You had to watch 10 movies or 12 movies or whatever it was to see everything and be caught up to understand what was going on in Avengers. The problem now is like just to watch that Doctor Strange movie, right? You didn't have to watch WandaVision, but the movie made a hell of a lot more sense if you had seen WandaVision. Sure. So now, by the time they get to the end of this phase, or to, the Kang War, Kang Dynasty, by the time they get to those movies, you're going to have watched like 40 films and 8 TV shows, and it's like a month worth of homework.
Kids don't got that type of attention span anymore.
Kids do. Kids will soak that all up, because that's kind of like baseball cards for some kids. Kids, kids would sit down and they'd look at baseball cards and just memorize the stats. And that's how some kids connected with sports. Their nerds were the same way. Nerds would know, the stats for every beholder in Dungeons and Dragons, or they know,
we knew that the Tyrannosaurus shook.
Exactly. All that kind of stuff. Like we everybody has those minutia that they memorize.
Sure.
And so I think there's an audience that's always going to be down to know all of that stuff. I think, are they going to lose the general audience? Maybe.
I think so. I think that's going to that's where they're going to suffer is I don't think the average consumer, not the fanatic or someone who's the average consumer is not going to be willing to put that much time into this stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And even me I wouldn't say I'm a fanatic. I enjoy, obviously. I mean, I enjoyed enough to tattoo my arm full of characters, but like it's a lot. Like She-Hulk, I watched maybe 2 episodes before I kind of got bored of it, and I'm done with it. Like the only one of the TV shows that I watched fully was like Loki, right? That one was kind of interesting. I saw WandaVision, but only because like it was like right after like Endgame and stuff like that. It had so much kind of to do with Endgame, so I was curious about that. I saw the Spider-Man flick. That wasn't bad, but that was more of a nostalgic thing because we all wanted to see the old characters.
But that's Disney too. Disney's doing a lot of eating its own tail.
That's true.
They're like all of the live action remakes of their animated stuff that I've never really had any interest in watching any of those because I'd rather just watch the original. I'd rather show my kids the original.
I think as long as they're doing better than DC, I think they're winning.
There's
that. And The Rock is, speaking of The Rock, he's a very hopeful guy right now. He's hoping that from what I've read so far, and mind you, it's his post, so I'm assuming he's looking for the best reviews, have said that his Black Adam movie is pretty well done. I'll wait for that, I guess, because I mean, I'm not anything that has to do with DC. I don't freaking hold my breath for because they've let me down so bad in so many films. One thing that's floating around is that Henry Cavill does make a appearance, spoiler alert, He does make an appearance in the credit scene. Which is
watch
pretty
the
cool.
movie. How are you throwing out spoiler?
Because I've read everything. I do research. I'm a read guy. I'm sorry. But I think that might be interesting to watch, to see those two kind of go at it, because they're both kind of massive characters, and they're both like. See, I don't know if The Rock fits Black Adam as I recall Black Adam.
I have no familiarity with that character.
I've played with the character, I've seen him in a couple cartoons, and I played him in a couple games for DC and whatever. And he's not portrayed like The Rock per se, but I do kind of like the idea of The Rock being the actor who he is, his persona, to go up against Henry Cavill, which he looks awesome as fucking Superman. I think he's the best looking Superman we've ever had. I mean, besides Christopher Reeves, I guess. Christopher Reeves was obviously the original.
You don't like Dean Cain?
No. But we'll see how that works out. I mean, they're having issues over there, so that camp is pretty. You know who's losing his goddamn mind?
Oh,
that kid, the guy who plays Flash, Ezra Miller. Is that his name?
Their name, yeah.
He's losing his mind.
What do you do now?
Man, he just doesn't know how to control himself. He's getting into fights everywhere, blah, blah, blah. Like, why? I mean, you're a famous person. I mean, you could just do whatever you want.
Is he a child actor?
I don't know.
I'm not sure what their problem is. He's non-binary too. I think he goes they and them.
They and them?
Yeah.
He's just, I'm sorry. They and them?
Yeah.
I can't even say that. It's so hard to do it. They out of his mind. I don't know how you can't control yourself in public. I find it so difficult.
There's clearly some mental issues there going on. I think that's even been reported online.
So why wouldn't DC help him or help at all?
Who knows if they can? Like, who knows if DC can?
Oh, that's true. And I was so
he's throwing away a bag, as the kids would say. That's a lot of money he's risking.
And I was looking forward to seeing the Flash with Michael Keaton in it and the whole 9 yards.
I think he still will. I think they can.
I think they canceled. What's the other one they canceled?
They canceled Batwoman,
and he was in there too, wasn't he?
Yes.
Oh, see, I wanted to see everything with Michael.
I think Batwoman will surface somewhere.
It's going to be another Snyder cut.
It'll get leaked or it'll something. From everything I've read, that's a tax write-off for him. Like, the fact that they didn't release it was a tax thing because, who is it? Discovery bought Warner Brothers. Yeah,
but you would have to. I mean, it had to be something because you would lose money. Like, why would a company or a studio make a film, make an entire film, and just scrap it and lose all the money and not make one boxy ticket at all?
Yes.
That's insane. At least release it straight to DVD.
Yeah.
Put it on. Break it up into pieces and put
straight
it on
to Netflix.
Put it on
DVD.
HBO, whatever. So we'll wind down. Where can people find you if you have any social media? If you want, people to reach out to you.
Easiest way, if you want to reach out to me directly, is Facebook. I've got a profile up there. It's just Timothy Troy. You'll find me, and you'll see, if you scan through the posts and you see stuff about movies, it's probably mine. If you want to look for my stuff, www.youtube.com/crazylittlemonster. That's the YouTube channel. crazylittlemonsterproductions.com is the website.
Do you got any advice for up and coming directors, filmmakers, anything like that?
Watch a lot of movies. That's the best way to learn, really. That and get out on set. The best things you can do if you want to direct is to direct, for one thing. The best advice I ever got was directors direct, DPs shoot, actors act. Like, if you want to do something, you can't just talk about it. You have to go do it. Writers write. It's same concept, right? So even if you're just grabbing a camera, even if you're just grabbing your phone, go make movies, go screw up, right? You will learn by screwing stuff up at first and then getting better from it. If you have make movies on your iPhone, you can cut them together on your computer. You can cut them together with iMovie. At least you start learning how shots work and how things go together. There's tons of resources online you can find if you just want to kind of learn it yourself. Everybody has their own process. I learned best in school. That's why I went to Columbia College. I knew that about myself. Like, I was not the type that would just be able to jump out on set and learn how to do all this stuff. I needed the structure. I needed the process of, the textbooks. This is how this works. This is how all of these pieces go together. That helped me. Some other people want to just jump in, grab the camera, and do it. That works too. Everybody, you kind of have to know yourself and how you want to approach things. But that's my advice. Like, if you want to do it, just go start doing it. And if you have any questions, I am always happy to talk about filmmaking. I'm always happy to give advice. I'm always happy to look at stuff for people. I actually think I might start a script reading service too. So I've been reading a ton of scripts for friends and people over the years, and I've gotten to the point where everybody's like, you give really good notes. So I'm thinking about...
Might as well make money doing it.
I'm thinking about it, you know? So,
all right, real quick. You got a $500 million budget, horror film. Who's your lead?
Well, with a $500 million budget, I'm probably making 30 movies, but because I don't need $500 million to make one horror movie. You know,
basically, I guess the question is, if you can work with anyone,
I can work with anyone.
Basically,
who would be your?
He's got to fit the genre. You're not getting Jim Carrey.
It's gonna sound
then
like
you end up like number 23.
Yeah.
You know?
All right. It's gonna sound like a cop-out answer, but hopefully, it's the true answer. Right? Is I can't tell you until I have a script.
That's fair. I can see that because you like you just said, if you want somebody to fit, you have to know what the story is about.
Yeah. I mean, it all comes down to the script, and I have to cast based on what that story is. You know, if you want to ask me about the feature I have in my brain right now, like I have actors in mind that I would want to cast, but that's because they're specifically for those roles. You know? It all comes down to the story. What story are you trying to tell? Who fits that role?
So let's make it more general.
Okay.
Forget genre. Let's just say, what actor do you wish at some point you could work with if you had someone in mind?
Interesting.
Don't say The Rock.
Don't say The Rock. Well, what if I want to work with The Rock?
He draws a lot of. If you want to make money in your film, he would be the person to bring because he draws a lot of money.
Live or Dead?
Any.
Yeah.
Let's go any.
Cary Grant.
I like Cary. Know who that is?
Cary Grant.
Cary Grant.
Cary Grant. Yeah. Let me think of he was in a few Hitchcock movies. He was in.
So you're talking old time.
Yeah. Oh, movie called Arsenic and Old Lace, which I absolutely love. One of my favorite movies ever. And there's just something about how he reacts and the expressions you get out of his face that I really enjoy watching. And so I think I would have liked to work with him.
I'm going to have to look him up. I've heard of the name. It sounds familiar.
You'll know him as soon as you see him.
Huh? You answer your own question. I guess your
I mean, you already know what it is.
Your version of this would be if you can lift weights with anyone,
who
would you lift with?
The guy behind me. Now that I can beat him, shit.
Oh, no. Can you beat him like today? Or can
pretty
he
strong.
Still beat you up right now?
We talked about this earlier before, too. Like maybe Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise?
Because I think he'd be really interesting to work with. I think he has a really good sense of what makes a good Tom Cruise movie, for one thing. But I think in order to do that, you have to have a really good sense of understanding story in general, story and character, because you have to know how it pertains to you. So I think I'd be interested to work with Tom Cruise.
See, like for me, obviously, if I ever shared any moment with Gary Oldman, I wouldn't even know what to say. I had the privilege of working with J.K. Simmons at one point on a show. That was kind of big for me. Like, he's super talented. Denzel's another one. Like,
sure,
anything with Denzel, anything. You know, there's just like so many that just to see what they do, not even just for me to learn from them. You know, that's just crazy. Let alone work with them. You know, but those would be mine. Like just those guys. You know, Viola Davis would be big too, you know. But anyways, did you have a good time?
I had a great time here.
We appreciate you coming down. Maybe we'll get you back on.
Anytime you want. Yeah.
Anytime. John, you got anything else?
No, I'm good.
All right, cool. We're gonna sign out, guys. And that's gonna be our show for tonight. Like, comment, and subscribe. Remember, everything we said is in our opinion, and if you don't agree with it,